On Thanksgiving morning, as I woke up in my Chicago apartment, a familiar anxiety crept into my chest. Another year, another family reunion. This year's gathering place was the Breakers, a luxury resort hotel in Palm Beach, Florida. As always, the entire trip was fully covered by my grandfather. While doing a final check of my suitcase, I let out a deep sigh and glanced at my reflection in the mirror. I'm Harper Walker, 31 years old, a research director at a pharmaceutical company earning $160,000 a year, living alone in Chicago, I reminded myself. I have steadily built my assets through careful investments. Money is important, but dignity is even more precious. One of my grandfather's lifelong lessons. A successful businessman who made his fortune in construction, he taught me everything I know about financial management. Since childhood, he had instilled in me the principles of investments and asset control. He's the only one in the family who truly understands me. In stark contrast, my sister Nancy is a former flight attendant turned full-time housewife. She appears to live an affluent life with her husband and 7-year-old daughter, but the truth is far from what it seems. Their high mortgage payments, car loans, and their daughter's private school tuition, everything is sustained by my grandfather's financial support. Yet, Nancy's social media tells a different story. Her posts are flooded with new designer bags, extravagant dinners at high-end restaurants, and luxurious vacations. She's obsessed with projecting an image of wealth and glamour, a life completely detached from reality. My parents, George and Margaret, are no different. They appear to be enjoying a comfortable retirement in Florida, but their entire lifestyle is dependent on my grandfather. From their retirement home's hefty deposit to their daily expenses, none of it would be sustainable without his help. They have always been cold toward me, yet endlessly indulgent with my sister. That favoritism hasn't changed since childhood. During my college years, I relied on scholarships and part-time jobs to cover tuition and living expenses. Meanwhile, Nancy enjoyed a life of privilege, with our parents funding everything, from her study abroad programs to her personal spending. That disparity remains a painful memory, a reminder of the silent battles I fought alone. I become someone who can stand on their own feet. That was another saying my grandfather often repeated. I took those words to heart. Through relentless effort, I built a successful career in the pharmaceutical industry, grew my assets through smart investments, and created a life free from dependency. My high-rise apartment, overlooking Chicago's skyline, was earned through my own hard work. Moderate luxury within my means, that's the life I chose. As I lifted my suitcase, an unsettling feeling gripped me. This year's Thanksgiving felt different. The tension in our family's fractured relationships had only intensified over time. My sister's desperate competition for appearances, my parents' unrelenting favoritism, and my grandfather's ever-growing concern. It all weighed heavily on my mind. Sitting in the taxi on the way to the airport, I thought about what awaited me. The Breakers, a prestigious 5-star hotel founded in 1896, boasting Italian Renaissance architecture and opulent suites exceeding $800 per night. The Thanksgiving special dinner alone was said to cost $200 per person. The extravagant setting contrasted sharply with the fragile reality of our family. Nancy's lavish lifestyle, my parents' comfortable retirement, all of it was built on the shaky foundation of my grandfather's wealth. And this year, that foundation was on the verge of collapse. Everyone knew it, yet no one dared to acknowledge it. As my taxi pulled up at Palm Beach International Airport, the Florida sunshine streamed in through the window, deceptively warm and serene. A storm was brewing beneath the surface of our family's perfect facade. When I finally arrived at the Breakers under the crisp Thanksgiving sky, I was the last to check in. Pulling my navy Rimowa suitcase behind me, I braced myself for the unraveling of the carefully constructed illusion that had held our family together for so long. Stepping into the magnificent Italian Renaissance-style building, I immediately felt the weight of my long journey. My simple yet elegant theory dress, slightly wrinkled from the flight, clung to my frame as I adjusted my posture. The lobby stretched out before me, an expanse of pristine marble floors, dignified and immaculate, while an opulent chandelier overhead glittered with a refined brilliance. Soft murmurs and the gentle clinking of glassware drifted through the space as other guests enjoyed their Thanksgiving afternoon in their own way. As I made my way to the front desk, my gaze landed on my parents. They stood in a secluded corner of the lobby, deep in conversation. My mother, looking radiant in what appeared to be a brand new resort dress, exuded an air of practiced elegance. My father, in contrast, was dressed casually but appropriately for his age. The moment our eyes met, they quickly averted their gazes, their expressions unreadable. "Ms. Walker, I apologize, but I can't seem to find your reservation." The front desk staff's voice was tinged with unease. They repeatedly checked the screen, confusion flickering across their face. "I do see reservations for your family members, but..." Before the staff could finish their sentence, the sharp click of expensive heels on marble drew my attention. I turned just in time to see Nancy striding toward us, her expression triumphant. Her Hermes Birkin bag dangled effortlessly from her arm, and the glint of her Cartier watch caught the light. "Oh, Helen, you finally made it," she drawled, her voice laced with deliberate sarcasm. The front desk attendant continued checking the system, their frown deepening. Meanwhile, the hum of conversation around us began to quiet as other guests started to take notice. "How strange that there's no reservation," Nancy continued, her voice lifting just enough to draw further attention. Her Louis Vuitton suitcase stood in stark contrast to my navy Rimawa case, an unsubtle display of her curated image. She took a step closer, her smirk widening. "Actually," she said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy, "I only booked reservations for our family." The words hung in the air like a slap. A room for me, my husband, and my daughter, and of course, one for Mom and Dad. She tilted her head, savoring the moment. "Just for the real family, you see?" A thick silence enveloped the space. The front desk staff looked momentarily speechless. My parents turned their backs further, making no attempt to intercede. The realization of what was happening settled into my bones like ice. I took a slow, steady breath, keeping my expression impassive. "I see," I said simply. Without another word, I adjusted my grip on my suitcase handle and turned to the front desk attendant. "Thank you for checking," I said politely before pulling out my phone. I opened my taxi-hailing app with a few swift taps. Nancy's smirk faltered. "Wait," she said, her voice rising slightly, as if she hadn't anticipated this reaction. But I was already walking toward the entrance. I could feel the sympathetic glances from the staff, the shifting gazes of the other guests who had witnessed the scene. My sister, though caught off guard, quickly regained her composure, her triumphant mask slipping back into place. My parents, however, stood frozen, awkward and unmoving. The only sound that remained was the quiet echo of my footsteps across the polished marble floor. As I stepped outside, the afternoon sun bathed the entrance in golden light. The palm trees swayed gently in the warm breeze, indifferent to the tension I had just walked away from. In mere minutes, the Thanksgiving holiday I was supposed to spend at this luxury resort had unraveled completely. And yet, in the midst of it all, a strange sense of liberation washed over me. My grandfather's words surfaced in my mind. Become someone who can stand on their own feet. Now, for the first time, I truly understood their meaning. As I waited for the taxi, I took a moment to take in the grandeur of the breakers. Its Adams-style architecture, rich with over a century of history, stood as a testament to enduring opulence. Thanksgiving decorations adorned the entrance, and luxury cars continued to arrive, unloading well-dressed families who disappeared into the warmth of the lobby. Through the glass doors, I spotted my niece, Amy. Dressed in an extravagant outfit far too lavish for a 7-year-old, she fidgeted behind her mother, her small face peeking out hesitantly. For a brief moment, I wondered if she was looking for me. Every Thanksgiving, it had been my tradition to bring her a present. This year, I had carefully chosen a delicate pearl hair clip, now sitting, untouched, in my suitcase, still wrapped in its elegant box. The taxi pulled up and I climbed inside, giving the driver my destination, Palm Beach International Airport. With my phone in hand, I searched for the next available flight to Chicago. Thanksgiving airfare was notoriously expensive, but at that moment, it didn't matter. The emotional toll of these annual gatherings had always cost me far more. Through the rearview mirror, I watched as the breakers grew smaller in the distance. Its grandeur shimmered under the afternoon sun, a fitting symbol of my family's carefully constructed illusion. And now, for the first time, a crack had appeared in that facade. I didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain: there was no going back. The quiet interior of the taxi wrapped around me, shielding me from the chaos I had left behind. And as the car sped toward the airport, I allowed myself, for the first time in years, to breathe. The hum of the car engine blended with the soft whir of the air conditioning, maintaining a comfortable coolness. The premium leather seats gradually eased the lingering tension from earlier. Outside the window, the signature resort scenery of Palm Beach unfolded. Neatly lined palm trees, pristine white luxury homes, and occasional glimpses of the Atlantic's shimmering surface. Views that would normally captivate me now felt strangely distant, as if they belonged to a world I no longer recognized. Without hesitation, I pulled out my smartphone and dialed my grandfather's number. The ringtone stretched longer than usual, or perhaps it only felt that way. When he finally answered, his voice carried its usual steady composure. "Ellen, what's wrong?" "I have something to report," I responded, my tone devoid of emotion. With precision, I relayed the events at the hotel, the missing reservation that excluded only me, Nancy's cruel words, and my subsequent decision to leave. I presented everything in chronological order, just the facts. On the other end of the line, I could hear my grandfather's breathing grow slightly rough, a telltale sign of his suppressed anger. But I didn't add anything, seeking sympathy. "I understand. I'll handle this from here," he said, his voice low and resolute. There was something foreboding in those few words, a promise of consequences yet to unfold. Shortly after the call ended, my phone erupted with a flood of incoming notifications. First, Nancy. In the span of 15 minutes, over 10 missed calls registered on my screen. Then came the messages. "Helen, Amy wants to see you. She was looking forward to our annual Thanksgiving tradition. Can't you think about a child's feelings? My friends are coming for dinner tonight. I was planning to post the perfect family Thanksgiving on Instagram. Do you know how embarrassing this is for me? How am I supposed to explain this?" Her tone grew increasingly desperate, nearly hysterical, but I didn't respond. Between her calls, emails from our parents started arriving. The first was from my mother, cold and detached as always. We could have added another room, but as Nancy said, we prioritized the real family. "You're independent now, aren't you? If you can afford it, why not just book your own room with your salary? It shouldn't be a big deal. Why are you being so emotional?" Then came my father's email, more calculating, more ruthless. "Nancy has a family, a husband and a child. You understand that, right? Can't you just quietly tolerate it for Thanksgiving? That's always been your problem, thinking only of yourself, never considering the family." My mother followed up, painting me as the villain once again. "We had everything planned, photos for social media, pictures of you and Amy together. Now it's all ruined." Each message tightened a familiar knot in my chest, but I should have been used to this by now. Since childhood, the disparity had always been clear. Nancy, the cherished daughter. Me, the one expected to endure in silence. As the taxi neared the airport, a new wave of messages surged in. "Because of your selfishness, Amy is crying. She had been waiting so long to see you." Nancy continued weaponizing her daughter's emotions, using Amy as a shield until the very end. But beneath the theatrics, all I saw was vanity and wounded pride. Then came another email from my mother, laced with biting sarcasm. "Poor Nancy, if only you knew how much she worries about Amy's future. But of course you wouldn't understand. Raising a child requires money." For once, I felt no obligation to reply. If anything, I was grateful that they had finally exposed their true colors so blatantly. Just before reaching the airport, a final email arrived. It was from my grandfather. "I'm proud of your decision. I understand everything." As I read his words, my vision blurred for a moment, but these were not tears of sadness. No, this was something different. A quiet determination, the realization that this was the beginning of a new chapter. Meanwhile, my phone continued to vibrate relentlessly. "Answer the phone right now." Nancy's messages became more frantic. "Your selfishness is tearing this family apart." My parents' emails grew more accusatory. But as the taxi came to a halt at the departure terminal, I found myself unmoved. I had already reached a place where their words no longer had the power to hurt me, where no one's voice could reach me. Stepping out of the taxi, I walked toward the international terminal, my fingers swiftly finalizing my flight booking to Chicago. A strange sense of liberation coursed through me. This was the moment I was freed from the illusion of the so-called real family. About 30 minutes after boarding my flight, a new email arrived from my grandfather. Every family member was copied on the message. The following is my final decision to be announced. It began in his usual dignified and unwavering tone. Today, on Thanksgiving, an incident occurred that severely damaged our family's dignity. The cruel treatment of Helen is an injury to the Walker family name and cannot be tolerated under any circumstances. Effective immediately, I am freezing all financial support to George, Margaret, and Nancy. I must remind you that your luxurious lifestyles are entirely dependent on my support. Those who have lost sight of the true essence of family, drowning in vanity and pretense, no longer qualify for such privileges. Just as I finished reading that part, my phone started buzzing with incoming calls from my sister. The sheer frequency of them betrayed her panic. "Helen, please answer. You have to convince Grandpa." Voicemail after voicemail captured her frantic voice. It was clear her entire life was unsustainable without the monthly payments. Every single expense, mortgage, car payments, private school tuition, was structured around grandfather's unwavering $30,000 monthly support. Emails from my parents soon followed, flooding my inbox. The arrogance from earlier had vanished, replaced by desperate pleading. "Helen, this is about our retirement. Please talk to your grandfather." If grandfather's decision stood, their reserved luxury retirement home deposit of $150,000 would be forfeited. Their subsidized medical insurance would be cut off. The reality of their once secure future collapsing in an instant had finally sunk in. "Do something. He'll listen to you, won't he?" Mother's email contained something unfamiliar. An apology. "I'm sorry for saying such terrible things earlier, but this is a family crisis." I quietly powered off my phone. Outside the window, a vast sea of clouds stretched endlessly. The perfect family Thanksgiving photos that had been meticulously posted on social media every year would not be uploaded this time. For Nancy, that might be an even bigger blow than the financial devastation. The plane glided steadily toward Chicago without turbulence. My seatmate browsed Thanksgiving recipes on their phone, likely planning a warm, welcoming dinner for their loved ones. Normally, at this time, I would have been seated in the hotel lounge, handing Amy her present. Upon landing, I connected to my home Wi-Fi and found over 100 unread messages waiting. Most were from my sister, each one more frantic than the last. "What am I supposed to do? I won't be able to pay the loans. What about Amy's school fees?" The emails from my parents had turned grave. "We might not be able to recover the retirement home deposit. What are we supposed to do now? I can't sleep at night thinking about the medical insurance." However, the message that caught my attention the most was grandfather's final notice, sent to all family members. "This measure is irreversible. Consider it the consequence of your own actions. Any objections to my decision will result in the termination of all remaining support." I calmly read through the messages. The same people who had treated me as an outsider, who had dismissed me as secondary, were now reduced to desperate, pleading voices. For the first time, each of their true natures stood exposed, raw and undeniable. Setting my phone down, I moved to the kitchen and brewed a cup of tea. Normally, I would have been seated at the resort, indulging in their extravagant Thanksgiving dinner, an experience priced at $200 per person. The thought of that cost made me smile slightly. Every year, my sister's family had flaunted this luxurious meal on social media, yet behind the scenes, they had been struggling just to keep up with monthly credit card payments. A new call came in. This time it was from Nancy's husband. His voice, a mix of panic and frustration, was laced with something else: accusation. "Do you even know how reckless your wife has been with money?" It seemed the cracks in their marriage were starting to show. More messages arrived from our parents, growing increasingly desperate. "The retirement home won't refund the $150,000 advance payment. Medical insurance will be self-paid starting next month. Because of you, our retirement is ruined." I read the message, took a slow sip of my tea, and let the words settle. There was no anger, no guilt, no regret. Just the quiet affirmation that, for the first time in my life, I had finally stepped away from their web of manipulation. And there was no turning back. The cycle of defending my sister and criticizing me repeated itself endlessly, as if they had learned nothing. I took a lemon from the refrigerator, sliced it, and added it to my tea. Tomorrow I would return to work as usual. A new research project awaited me at the pharmaceutical company. Data analysis, progress reports, structured goals. My $160,000 annual salary steadily accumulated, investment trusts grew, and my stable life foundation, built by my own efforts, remained unshaken. Outside the window, Chicago's night view sparkled in quiet brilliance. The lights of the high-rise buildings resembled distant stars. My mind drifted to my own credit card statement. Full payment every month, a moderate luxury within my means, no debt. My grandfather's favorite saying resurfaced in my thoughts. Vanity is for others. Savings are for yourself. In this city, I had carved out my own life through sheer effort. As grandfather always told me, I had become someone who could stand on their own feet. And now, I felt with certainty that my choice had been the right one. My smartphone continued to vibrate with incoming calls, but they were voices that no longer reached me. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, in early December, Chicago was blanketed in its first snow. My days were spent immersed in new projects at the pharmaceutical company's laboratory. While my daily routine remained unchanged, my family's situation had shifted drastically. The first noticeable changes appeared on social media. My sister's once frequent Instagram updates had abruptly stopped. Her last post, from the day before Thanksgiving, was an image of her Hermes bag at an upscale restaurant, captioned with hashtags about a dream lifestyle. The once admiring comments beneath it now seemed painfully ironic. Emails from my father, at last, reflected genuine remorse. I've been reflecting on our years of extravagant living. We spoiled Nancy too much, and we were cold to you. I'm sorry. Similar messages arrived from my mother. With their medical insurance subsidies cut off, they were finally grasping the true cost of healthcare. Our pension alone is nowhere near enough. I finally understand how luxuriously we were living. Nancy's situation was even more severe. One evening, an unexpected call came from her husband. His voice carried exhaustion and disbelief. I've discovered hidden debts she never told me about. I'm shocked by the credit card bills. We can't sustain this lifestyle anymore. With my grandfather's financial support severed, their illusion of affluence had collapsed overnight. We're considering moving to a smaller house. We're looking at public schools for Amy, too. Nancy cries every night. Even their marriage itself seemed to be at a breaking point. Meanwhile, my life remained peaceful. I arrived at work at 8 a.m. and returned home at 6 p.m. Weekends were spent attending investment study groups, reviewing financial strategies, and continuing to live within my means. Just yesterday, I was promoted to team leader for a major research project. My salary was set to increase, and my investment portfolio was performing well. I had no anxieties about the future. Vanity brings momentary satisfaction, savings bring lifelong peace of mind. My grandfather's words, once merely advice, had now become a truth deeply felt by my entire family. While my parents fretted over their retirement security and my sister struggled with debt repayment, I simply continued living my ordinary life. Over the past 2 weeks, the once desperate calls and emails had dwindled from a constant flood to mere sporadic messages. Even their tone had shifted, from anger and pleading to resignation. Amy will be transferring to public school. She'll take the school bus. I never imagined this would happen. Nancy's latest email hinted at reluctant acceptance. The glamorous private school lifestyle she had once flaunted on social media would never be posted again. Our parents, too, were adjusting. They were selling their luxury home in Florida and moving into a modest condominium. Struggling with medical bills had erased any remaining illusions of wealth. We've been living with the wrong values for years. That was written in my father's latest email. Whether this realization would lead to genuine change remained uncertain. A week ago, I received a concise email from my grandfather. Awakening to the truth of life sometimes brings pain. but it is necessary pain. Your decision gave them an important lesson. I didn't reply, I simply saved the email, knowing that I had chosen the right path. 3 months after that Thanksgiving, the first signs of spring emerged in the city. My life hadn't changed. If anything, it had become even more fulfilling. The new project at the pharmaceutical company was progressing smoothly, and last week I received notice of a promotion. My achievements as research director had been recognized, and my salary was set to increase to $200,000. My investment trust operations continued to thrive, with assets growing steadily. From my office window, I gazed at the vast surface of Lake Michigan, where waves sparkled under the spring sunlight, carrying with them a quiet sense of hope. Stacks of new research data were piled high on my desk. Work had always been my most valuable refuge. A few days ago, a birthday present arrived from my grandfather, a simple pearl necklace. The attached card bore a single line in his familiar, elegant handwriting. True brilliance dwells in those who stand on their own feet. I had started maintaining minimal contact with my parents. They had moved from their luxurious Florida community to a more affordable condominium. Struggling with medical bill payments, they seemed to be gradually adapting to reality. Luxury brings momentary joy, but true security lies in a grounded lifestyle. For the first time, my mother's emails reflected genuine understanding. My sister's family had also relocated to an ordinary suburban neighborhood. Amy had begun attending public school and was adjusting to riding the school bus. Nancy's once thriving social media presence remained silent. In one of her rare emails, she wrote, "How empty it all seems now. Posting just to keep up appearances." The days spent battling credit card payments had strained their marriage, but at least they were no longer turning away from reality. Meanwhile, I had begun setting new goals. I wanted to achieve more in pharmaceutical research, with the ultimate dream of leading my own research team. I hoped to pass on my knowledge and experience to young scientists. On holidays, I attended study groups on investment and economics. The people I met there lived solid, practical lives. Our conversations, sincere and free from pretense, felt refreshing. The Thanksgiving incident had left profound lessons for everyone: the importance of financial independence, the emptiness of a pretentious lifestyle, and, above all, the true meaning of family. My grandfather's final words still resonated in my heart. Real bonds can only be forged through hardship. In my desk drawer, the pearl hair clip I had bought for Amy remained beautifully wrapped. Someday, when she truly understood value, when she realized the importance of standing on her own feet rather than chasing social media validation, perhaps that would be the right time to give it to her. Outside the window, the early spring winds rustled through the trees, whispering the promise of a new season. Life sometimes brings pain, but it is necessary pain. Your decision gave them an important lesson. I didn't reply. I simply saved the email. Outside, in Chicago's winter sky, new stars were beginning to twinkle. 3 months after that Thanksgiving, the first signs of spring emerged in the city. My life hadn't changed. If anything, it had become even more fulfilling. The new project at the pharmaceutical company was progressing smoothly, and last week, I received notice of a promotion. My achievements as research director had been recognized, and my salary was set to increase to $200,000. My investment trust operations continued to thrive, with assets growing steadily. From my office window, I gazed at the vast surface of Lake Michigan, where waves sparkled under the spring sunlight, carrying with them a quiet sense of hope. Stacks of new research data were piled high on my desk. Work had always been my most valuable refuge. A few days ago, a birthday present arrived from my grandfather, a simple pearl necklace. The attached card bore a single line in his familiar, elegant handwriting. True brilliance dwells in those who stand on their own feet. I had started maintaining minimal contact with my parents. They had moved from their luxurious Florida community to a more affordable condominium. Struggling with medical bill payments, they seemed to be gradually adapting to reality. Luxury brings momentary joy, but true security lies in a grounded lifestyle. For the first time, my mother's emails reflected genuine understanding. My sister's family had also relocated to an ordinary suburban neighborhood. Amy had begun attending public school and was adjusting to riding the school bus. Nancy's once thriving social media presence remained silent. In one of her rare emails, she wrote, "How empty it all seems now, posting just to keep up appearances." The Thanksgiving incident had left profound lessons for everyone: the importance of financial independence, the emptiness of a pretentious lifestyle, and, above all, the true meaning of family. A final lesson. True independence is not just financial stability, but also self-respect and knowing when to walk away. Do not seek validation from others at the cost of your dignity. Choose reality over illusion, growth over comfort, and truth over pretense. Life will challenge you, but your worth is defined by your choices. Stand firm, believe in yourself, and never compromise your self-respect for acceptance. The path to independence is not easy, but it is the most rewarding journey you can take.